Welcome to YPN in the Know, where we dive into the journeys, challenges, and successes of young professionals in the AEC industry. My name is Kate Saunders, and I am the Business Development and Operations Coordinator at 2M Next, and I will be moderating our conversation today. So this podcast is all about pulling back the curtain on building a career as a young professional in the AEC industry, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. So we're thrilled to have a great panel of professionals and members of the ACEC Junior Board. So whether you are just beginning your journey and looking for fresh perspectives, no matter what place you are in that journey, we're glad you're here. So instead of me, bringing everybody in and introducing everybody, so I'm going to let everybody do that for us. So we have all of these panelists, and they are wearing all different types of professional hats, whether they knew it was coming or not. But we will start with Allison. So what hat are you wearing today?
Yes. So hi, my name is Allison Hartney. My current role is project coordinator. I work at Aulick Engineering, and I started there about 8 years ago as a stormwater engineer. I did that for about 4 years, and then I was offered the opportunity to move more to the business side of things. And so I've been a project coordinator for the last 4 years. Our group is focused on all things operational support. So we handle the setup and closeout of all of our projects. I manage our IT coordination and handle all of our software and hardware licensing. Just a lot of different little things fall into that, but anything under the umbrella of operational support.
Wonderful. Thank you. Targ?
Yes. So good morning. So I'm Targ Milner. I'm the Planning and Projects Manager for the Cumberland CID. And so not familiar with CIDs, how I like to explain it is it's like an HOA, but for commercial properties. And I handle the operations for the Cumberland CID. Began my career out in construction, and I have an educational background in urban planning, so it's just how I got into the planning and project space. Again, like I said, I handle the operations for the CID for all of our infrastructure projects, our we do park beautification projects and a lot of trails projects to try to enhance that Cumberland area. Been there, and I've been with the CID for about going on 3 years now.
Beautiful. And what were you doing before?
Before I was in asphalt construction.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Carries over a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit. That project management, that's where it kind of comes in.
There you go. Chris?
Sure. I'm Chris Gallion. I'm a traffic operations and ITS project engineering team leader with HNTB. Been in the civil engineering space for going on 8 years. I'm a Louisiana native, so I'm an LSU Tiger. So if anybody got issues with that,
Talk about it later.
We'll talk about that later. But yeah, I've actually, I've been in civil engineering for 7-8 years, but I've been in transportation for about 3 or 4 of those years. And so at HNTB, I have a little team that works for me now. So I got an intern and a junior engineer. So really the hat for them is just to train them up and, guide them in the ways of engineering. I'm also the office onboarding manager, so kind of an HR adjacent role. Not really sure how I got into it. I think I just don't say no to stuff.
You have the right personality.
I think so.
I can see you
Yeah,
being a welcoming face.
I
on day
really
one.
enjoy it. Like, it's one of those things that doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that since September. I'm also getting involved with some of the business development side. I think Allison mentioned that. So learning about pursuits and how to keep us busy. And then outside of that, really just plugged into ACEC. Been privileged to be on the AC Junior Board with these illustrious professionals for the last year or so. Really being able to have a voice in the industry at a relatively young age in our career. So I'm really excited about this podcast.
Yeah.
Excited to share and just have a conversation with fellow Junior Board members in the industry.
Wonderful. Nick?
Hey, I'm Nick Bauer. I'm a bridge engineer with Kimley Horn, and I started my career off in Florida. So kind of similar to Chris, I'm a Gator fan in Georgia. Been in Georgia. Yeah, so been in Georgia for 5 years now. Been doing, bridges and anything transportation structure-wise the whole time for my career. And kind of my role now, a little bit less of engineering, a little bit more of project management, coordinating with other teams, coordinating with clients. Our bridge team is primarily in a support role for other disciplines. So, bridge is just a little piece of the puzzle for an overall project. So, my day kind of consists of putting out fires, handling pop-up challenges, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Firefighter on the side. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you guys for giving us a little introduction about what you guys do. But instead of the general, over topic, let's go into our day-to-days. So would anybody like to go first and kind of what their daily responsibilities look like, whether it changes, day-to-day, week to week? Yeah. Allison?
Sure, I can go first. Yes, so since my role has lots of different components, there really is no typical day. It does really change, which I love. Like, I would get bored if every day was exactly the same. So in any given week, I've got standard processes that have to happen. Like I mentioned, like project setups. Every week there's a couple project setups, project closeouts. We also have, monthly, quarterly, annual, kind of seasonal things, so a mix of weekly items as well as those kind of once a year projects, and then a good chunk of my time also goes to development of kind of internal projects of where do we need to grow, things we need. That can be like if we need a new template for a new type of report or just kind of any kind of internal need, so that as the engineers and inspectors need things, we've got the resources for them. So my week is always a mix, and every week looks different. I really try to maximize our in-office days for collaborative work, and then I try at least to keep my work from home days to be focused on those projects, so I can dig deep and get my work done. Mm-hmm. And then I also really rely on time blocking to make sure that I actually have time to do all the things I've committed myself to, so that's what keeps me in line all week. So.
And does that kind of time blocking kind of set the stage a little bit more from that momentum shift of, going between different activities and tasks? Does that time block help out?
Yeah, I mean, I have it color coded. So, there's the color code for like, these are meetings, and then versus what is actual time block that I think this task is going to take an hour and a half. And so that gives me the flexibility to look at my calendar and say, an urgent thing came in, I need to push this to later in the week, but still to be aware of like, well, I did commit to that. So if I can't do it today, I need to tell that person, hey, I need a couple more days. So it just helps me feel organized and that, with so many different hats that nothing falls through the cracks. So.
Absolutely. Keeping them all in your head.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Not in my head.
That's fair. That's fair.
I used to be all in my head, and I was like, no, I have to write it down. Otherwise, it's I gotta help myself be organized. So.
Anybody else have kind of a system like that where they're writing things down, checking things twice?
Not an official system. I feel like I might steal that one from you.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I definitely could use a little more structure when it comes to my day-to-day.
Yeah, I was going to jump in on that because I think I might start taking a screenshot of how I plan my week versus how it actually happens.
That's what I've been doing.
Because I spend intentional time mapping out the week every Friday or sometimes on Sundays before the week. I'll map out, okay, I'm gonna block off this time, but then inevitably things come up. I put my firefighter hat on, and jump in on things. But I think what it does do, it creates a baseline. So I now have a puzzle and I can shift the pieces of the puzzle.
Yes.
Whereas if I don't have it set up, then I'm just literally going from fire to fire with no structure. And so I think the time blocking approach is very valuable. I use OneNote a lot, so shout out to OneNote. If anybody. I love it, and I'm, we got interns working this summer, and they have these innovative approaches. So I'm kind of like the old guy now that's like, well, why don't you just use OneNote? And they're like, well, you can use these other things. So, but just having some system to track your tasks, because I know all of us, I'm sure, get inundated with emails from clients, from supervisors, from team leads, and so just having some system to track your day. I know my day is filled with meetings a lot, and so I try to squeeze in some time throughout meetings to actually get some stuff knocked out. So having that system and time blocking is really useful for me.
And then you sang a lot about meetings and kind of more of the structured technical. Do we see you at events? You're a very personal person, so.
You do see me at a lot of events. I will admit to that.
I see Chris at all the events.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's the side of work that's not work for me, and that's why I enjoy them so much. But now as I'm learning how to be more, have a little more jurisdiction over my time and not say yes to everything, I would say. But it's hard to say no because you got events where you can connect with young professionals and really develop genuine connections. I think, that's the part of engineering that maybe you don't learn in a textbook. We learn about statics and dynamics and, particle mechanics, but you actually can develop a lot of camaraderie just being in the industry, being present at these events. So yes, you will probably see me at most of our young professional networking events. For
I
sure.
love it. I love it. Keep an eye out. Nick, do you kind of have a day-to-day?
Yeah, so I think I might have alluded to it a little bit before, but you know, I'm kind of doing a little bit less and less of engineering, more project management stuff. But I do still enjoy the design aspect, and you know, we kind of deal with a lot of different clients, like anything from state, local, even private sometimes. So yeah, just kind of trying to stay adaptable, going off what we were talking about earlier, like. I feel like I'm always trying different ways to like make to-do lists and stuff like that. OneNote seems to be the most consistent one. So yeah, and I think, you know, as much as you prepare, your day never goes according to plan. But the one thing I've noticed is if you don't prepare, then you're definitely not adaptable. So yeah, that's definitely one thing I've learned. But as far as day to day, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a combination of like, you know, picking up the phone, calling people, working out challenges, you know, trying to work through design problems and stuff like that. So I think staying organized is like one of the things that, you know, is more and more of a focus. So
It
always
seems
trying
so
to learn
common
new
sense,
things.
but it's very easy to let it just like run away from you.
Mm.
And I think also for me, it helps with a sense of accomplishment of like, what did I need to get done today, and what did I actually get done? Because you know, there's a never-ending list of things to do, and if I don't have it, like this is what I have to do today, then it can just, you know, run away from you.
Yeah. I think for me too, the reason why I latched on to that time blocking comment is because, you know, I work with a lot of projects that are in different phases, and not having a good sense of what's next on the to-do list, or you know what you did the previous day, kind of gets you in trouble when it comes to tracking these different projects in different stages. So having some sort of, you know, daily tasks set ahead, or just something to track it. I know internally the CID we use a project management software called Asana. It helps keeps track, of different projects and different phases, and it lets you build out these different timelines and schedules where it's easy to keep track of everything.
I don't know about you guys, but I love checking a to-do list.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
there are
that's
some
always
times,
a
you
good
know,
one.
where we get pulled away and our to-do list isn't as checked off as we'd hoped for, and
Yeah.
can cause a little bit of frustration. Are there any things that you guys kind of do to manage that at all and try and stay motivated without, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, easier said than done. I think for me, it's just giving yourself grace that, and having like an intuition for like what deadlines are strict, and do I need to honor that, and what are things that are maybe like internal deadlines or things that I kind of arbitrarily set it, and like if I move things back, it's okay. And so again, that is a lifelong journey of finding that middle ground. So I don't know that I have any tips, but I just try and like look at the beginning of the day of like, okay, this is what I have scheduled. You know, I try and leave breaks for emergencies that do come up, or not even emergencies, but urgenter things that I haven't planned for, and just identify what do I have to do today, and what are like additional goals, and yeah, just giving
I think
yourself grace.
Yeah, jumping on that. And I like that word, urgenter.
Urgenter.
I was gonna say they are.
my personal
Urgenter.
dictionary. I'm gonna
Wow.
add to
I might have to add that one.
that. This is a little urgenter than the other word. But you
Not
bring
a
up-
fire drill.
Exactly. But you bring up a good point, and what I always advise younger engineers, and somebody told me this, is anytime somebody asks you something, always ask when do they need it. Because if you don't ask that, you can perceive everything at the same level of priority. And it's only a finite amount of time, so you can't do everything at the same time. So if Kate asks me to do something, but it's not due until July, and then Allison asks me something, but that's due today, I would prioritize Allison's request, but I have to ask that question to make sure I understand what everybody's expectations are. Because I know, you might have a supervisor, but really everybody to some degree can be a supervisor if they need something that you can provide to them. So just being upfront and asking those questions when somebody asks you for your support, I think is really important.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the clarification on that one. Just wanted to touch in on that one.
Exactly.
But next kind of main question is for Chris and Nick. So you guys are working a little bit more close to the transportation space. So when you think back on your journey into your current roles, what skills did you find you really had to go out and intentionally build? Just kind of whether or not that's technical or professional, but kind of how does that stem to get you where you are today?
I'll go first. I think the biggest thing for me is learning the not just the why, but the how. You know, you can always memorize an equation or memorize, you know, units, values, especially in structural engineering. But having a deeper understanding of why that equation is the way it is, or why you approach a problem that way, I think goes a long way. Especially just, you know, not just in the standpoint of having that deeper understanding, but eventually, you know, you'll be the one mentoring younger folks and stuff like that. And I think nothing proves more that you know what you're talking about than explaining it to someone who doesn't.
Right.
And you know, I think that goes even beyond mentoring, like especially as you go further in your career, learning how to like talk in layman's terms, if you will, at like meetings or open houses and stuff like that. You know, taking a complex problem and making it you know, simple and easily digestible is really important. And I think that all comes back to, especially early on in your career, like there's no better time to sit down and learn those things. Really, there's no better time probably to learn, period. You're always going to be learning in your career, but that's the time to really ask questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions and really dive in on things.
And did you have kind of a person that you relied to on those asking questions? Did you have more of like a natural, you know, formed mentorship, or?
I probably have a natural tendency to ask questions. So
Beautiful.
I think
Good.
I think I've just been lucky in my career that, you know, I've always had someone who's had that level of patience to kind of like walk me through those things. You know, there's no such thing as a dumb question,
Exactly.
as they say. And I think, you know, I've been pretty lucky in that respect. So.
Yeah. Any skills that you've had to kind of look for?
Yeah, I'll try not to ramble, but but I gotta start a little further back because I know, and hopefully what I'm about to say resonates with maybe people that's still in college or fresh out. But you know, you can hit a point in college where your goal is just to graduate.
Yeah.
You're not really intentionally learning. It's like, hey, I just need to pass this final, knock out this project. And so when I got into the workforce and I wasn't just solving problems, I was getting paid to solve problems. The feeling was different and the pressure was different. So, you know, for the most part in school, if you have a question, ask your teacher. They got office hours, or go to a study group, or it's probably in the textbook, or Google it. But when they say, you know, a community has a drainage issue, we need you to fix it, you can't go to just directly to a textbook to find that answer. You have to iterate through it, work with the team. And so I know I just, making the transition from college to career was a little bit of a hurdle for me. And so, but I was like Nick, I asked a lot of questions. Like, I asked a lot of questions. I think I didn't care whoever had the answer. I asked, like, if you don't have the answer, tell me who has it, because I had a thirst for knowledge and I didn't accept not knowing. I was trying to go find the answer. And so because I kind of realized that about my undergraduate career, I went and got a master's while I was working. And so I really wanted to sharpen my technical skills. So I went to Kennesaw State and did an online master's in civil engineering while working with 2 dogs and a wife.
Oh boy.
Don't recommend, but it could be done. If I can do it, you can do it. But it was through things like that helped me to really kind of bridge the gap, I would say, between some of the technical areas that I felt like I was lacking in. And then I made a career pivot at some point, because when I first got into the industry, I was working in aviation for about 2 years, from 2018 to 2020. And, you know, something happened in 2020, if y'all remember. This global situation took place, and nobody was really flying. And so a lot of our aviation work started to kind of diminish. And I started doing stormwater. Allison mentioned she started there. And then went to a smaller firm after that. And it was literally like a gentleman was sitting next to me that was doing traffic engineering. And I was looking at this little software that he was using called Synchro. And I was like you can simulate how the cars move, and, you know, based off the count you input. I was like, what you got going on? Can I help with that? That looks kind of neat. And so I started doing traffic engineering, and because I pivoted kind of a few years out of school, I really had to spend a lot of time to learn this software. And like, I love what Nick said. So I never wanted to be somebody that just knew how to use CAD or knew how to use a software. No, what are these ramifications? If you change these limits, or if you what erosion control impacts does this have? You're not just inputting counts. This is impacting traffic congestion and level of service. And so to go the extra mile of not just learning the software, but learning what it meant, it just took a lot of time and effort. And so, I guess the takeaway is like, you're going to learn some things in school. You're going to learn how to critically think, but the practical skills you really gain is going to come from asking questions, having mentors, and going the extra mile. You might not learn everything in a 40-hour week job, so it might take a little LinkedIn learning, YouTube University. You got TikTok University. So you might have to figure out other ways to bridge the knowledge gaps that you might have, but it's going to make you a better engineer. It's going to make you a better professional. So kind of a long-winded response, but I think it was through some of those things, and I was able to get my engineering license, and I struggled initially. So like that was like at some point I didn't even think I can do that. I had to retake it a couple of times, but I persevered and got my license. I was able to get my master's done, and the support system that I had through those things was paramount. Shout out to my wife. I don't know if she would hear this. I don't think she's in HCDC, but she's in the medical field. But I mean, she was her level of support, my church community, and just different extended family members. Probably again going beyond the question, but it really takes all that beyond just your peers and your coworkers. It takes like a holistic approach to growing as a person, growing as a professional. So.
Putting it into action, whether it's technical or going through a network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think to go what on Chris said real quick, you're always going to have something going on, and I got my master's too, and I think the one thing I'm glad I did is I did it when I did and not
Later.
now for a couple years. And just like putting in that extra effort, because there's no better nighttime reading than reading manuals and codes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just dreaming about them now.
Yeah.
Perfect. And now kind of shifting over to the two of you with project controls and coordination, just any skills that you guys had to intentionally pick up along the way to build where you are now.
Sure, I can go first. So I think I have always really enjoyed helping people. I really, like, a core value of my own is to be trustworthy and dependable and accountable. And so that's something that whether I'm at work or at home or in my community, just like those are skills I want to have and develop. So no huge thing I sought after, but just kind of those are things that are important to me, and I want that to be like the mark that I leave behind, that you can count on Allison. And so throughout my career, I think I have always put an emphasis on that. I think my company also really values that. So just along the way, I tried to, ask lots of questions, have open ears. If you hear someone in your workspace getting, feedback or, like tips and tricks, I would be like, okay, I'm listening. I'm jotting that down. So I've just always tried to like, how can I make myself a better team member? And while those are, kind of softer, more personal oriented things, I think that really paid off, that as my company grew and there was a need for someone to kind of bridge the gap between administrative and supportive roles with a technical background, they were like, Allison, we can trust Allison. And so, that's just for me, that kind of really digging down on those being valuable and being dependable has really paid off for me.
Perfect. And was there anybody that kind of made you feel that way, made you feel like a trustworthy person and somebody that, people could rely on?
Yeah, I mean, so Alec Engineering is a smaller, we're a DBE, and so especially when I started, it was a team of like 10 people. So it was a really small operation. Now we've grown to be about 60 people, which is crazy. But so there's a couple key people that have been there like the whole time since I started that I would consider like mentor. They shaped my career. But one person especially who she set a pretty high standard. And I was like, okay, you've set a bar. I'm gonna meet that. And I think that has just really paid off in other aspects of my career of setting the tone and the expectations that I carry out in my habits moving forward.
So we're not limboing that bar. We're hurdling over it.
I mean, again, we talked earlier about grace. Like at some point you have to be like, no one is perfect and we are all human. So I think there's a balancing act there. But I also appreciate that, like, to start, there was a higher standard set. So.
And then yourself?
So I think I am a big believer in that continuing education. So I know in my role, so pretty much what got me there is my experience, a firsthand experience in project management, working in construction, as well as my education in urban planning. But one thing that is very different from my role now to what it was previously is that I'm dealing primarily with the pre-construction phase of projects, which is concept and design, something I was very unfamiliar with. And it only took a handful of meetings for me to really sit down and like, okay, all right, I gotta figure out what's going on here. So I think I sat through, I completed the GDOT's PDP course, and so it really just kind of helps get my mind wrapped around all the acronyms and the different processes and yes, everybody here is familiar with that. And trust me, I don't have it, all the way down, but it is something that's really helped me. So like I say, I did that PDP process. I also recently got my PMP certification. So a lot of different soft skills, hard skills. Thank you. When it comes to it was a long process doing the study and taking that exam. But yeah, just helping with a lot of the soft skills as far as managing projects, managing people, and things like that. So I think I just kind of sat back and saw the gaps in my knowledge as far as what that day-to-day is, and instead of saying, oh man, I'm just never going to know these things, like, all right, well, how do I figure these things out? Just really take the time, like Chris was saying, really take the time outside of work hours to really sit down and figure, break that gap in my knowledge.
That's good.
Each phase, always learning.
Right.
Got to be adaptable to that. Yeah, no, Allison and Nick. So if you are graduating college now, why would you recommend engineering?
You want to go first or me?
I can go first.
Okay, sure.
I think the one thing that I enjoy is just, we all work in a field where the things that we do on a day-to-day basis are not the things that a normal person would think about, right? Like, especially in transportation, what I work in is, everyone goes from point A to point B, driving down the road, for example, but nobody thinks about like where the water goes or why the bridge is that wide or that long, and being that person to kind of make that a seamless experience and actually have it be that nobody thinks about it is I think the rewarding part for me, especially as a bridge engineer. You don't necessarily want people to notice what you do because that might not always be a good thing, but yeah, I mean, so at least in my friend group, not necessarily a whole lot of engineers. So I think just like having that knowledge, that unique knowledge that you're serving a purpose in the community that not everyone wants to do or can do is I think the rewarding part for me. So.
No news is good news. Perfect.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that. I will say I did not, as a child, be like, oh, I want to be a civil engineer. I don't think it was really on my radar. In high school, I decided I wanted to go to Georgia Tech, and then I was like, okay, what major can I have there? So I started as environmental and then shifted to civil. So, my love for the industry has really grown from being in it. It's not a lifelong dream that I had. But now that I'm in it, I feel like I really appreciate the, all the stuff that goes into the world that we enjoy. I'm constantly noticing inlets and anything that I've worked with, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what's going on there. And with my friends, people have started coming to me for like map reading and I'm buying a house, what should I check out? Things like that. So I think I appreciate the just like practical skills and the practical knowledge that goes along with being in the AEC industry. And then, similar to what you were saying, just like knowing all of the work and all of the money that goes into all of the things that people use for every day and don't notice. Like, I think I just appreciate the world that I live in a little bit more because of my work. And when, people are complaining about traffic and I'm like, or not traffic, construction. And it's like, well, it takes time. Like everything you're complaining about took so much time to get here. So I think it just makes me appreciate the world a little bit more. So.
Absolutely. Very tangible. You can
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
see everything that you're working on. But I'm probably going to invite you to the next trivia night. You seem like
Yeah.
you know a lot more about it.
Yeah.
But shifting gears, so sometimes our biggest lessons come from our setbacks. So I would love to kind of ask the two of you a little bit more about that, just any time that you experienced setback and kind of what you did to overcome it and learn from it. Tark, if you'd like to go.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. So, a time that I experienced somewhat of a setback, and, I think calling it a setback may not be the right term because I feel like it was definitely a lesson, or it just definitely gave me a lot of lessons that needed to be learned. And it was one of those things that was only going to be learned going through that situation firsthand. So, as a project manager, the goal of any project is to complete the project on time and on budget, under budget if you can. But so with this project particularly, I mean, I think things started out easy, relatively simple, but then got very, very complicated very, very quick. And one of the lessons that I think, the big lesson I think I took away from that project is about not making assumptions. When you go into a project, yes, you can do all the planning in the world. There are still going to be some things that come up that are unexpected, or things you need to solve for. But some of those unexpected circumstances could have been handled on the front end. When it comes to, like I said, like delays in projects, which you don't want to have, cost overruns, or just anything that makes a project not feasible. You really, like, the main goal is really to you want to mitigate that as much as possible. And through this particular project, I learned a lot of different ways to mitigate those issues in the future. But unfortunately, it wasn't able to do that in real time. But again, like I said, I think it was definitely a learning lesson. And, with any failure, you really have to just be able to take away, all right, what can I take from this situation so I know to make it better in the future?
It's only failure if you don't learn from it. So
Exactly.
we always have to. Chris?
Sure. I really enjoyed too what Tarek said, and I appreciate this question because it's we a lot of times, especially in social media and IG and everything, you typically just see the successes of people and not the failures or the journeys or the setbacks or the opportunities. So I think the one I would like to call out, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but in the civil engineering space, the big kahuna is to get your PE. Them two letters, like, they mean so much, and it's a big deal. So obviously I was tracking towards that. You got to get, you have a bachelor's, master's. You have to have the experience. Which, shout out to one of the other committees within the junior board that putting some guidance together about how to get licensure. So just shameless plug to the rest of the
shameless.
committee.
That was good.
So I was approaching the time where I was eligible to do it, and I failed it. Failed the PE, and it was earth shattering. And I think, I was preparing for it, but I just had a lot going on. Which, I wish you can put life on pause sometimes when you got stuff like, okay, I'm gonna study for the PE, I'm gonna just pause everything else. But that's just not realistic. So I had a lot going on, and I probably should have just pushed it out or something. But I was like, well, I'm an engineer, I can figure it out. So I failed it, and then I think it was like in September of 2023, and I just immediately rescheduled it because, I got a strong mind. So I was like, I'm gonna just do what I gotta do, lock in, and I failed it again, and that was really it was a heart-wrenching moment because I was like, I felt like I really did it this time, and I like what Allison said. By the way, Allison be dropping gems. Everybody does, but she says little powerful stuff, and then it's kind of just keep the conversation going. But she said, give yourself grace, and that's so true. And I didn't give myself grace between the first and second time I took it. I just kind of like put my head in the sand and was like, I'm going to just do it. So when I didn't pass it the second time, I was like, it's a stop, look, and listen moment. Right around that time, I shifted from my previous company to H&TB. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just put this on the shelf for now. I was still in grad school, but I gave myself some time just to adjust to a new job. I think I took a vacation. Like, I just did something that wasn't centered around the PE, but I knew it was still something I wanted to do. So that goes back to what Tarek mentioned. It's a temporary setback, but it sets you up for success. So it wasn't like I was giving up on it, but I was giving it some space. We should take some time apart. We broke up and then took some time apart.
Broke up with the PE.
But we had to get back together at some point, and I started preparing for it again. I mean, I really locked in and disciplined myself, and was like, to do a lot of these things, it takes sacrifice. So I like to play basketball. I like to do a lot of stuff with friends and family, but I had to sacrifice some Saturdays and some Fridays to focus on preparing for the PE, and after giving myself some grace.
Yeah.
The green pass button, like that, you see a little green icon when you pass. that's like I don't know, like it should be in all caps. Like it should just like
The
be
biggest
3D.
dopamine.
Like
It's too subtle.
it's too subtle. Like when you don't pass, and I say this because I know a lot of people in the industry experience this. It's a real thing. But when you don't pass, you get a very detailed review of what you know, and that's good because you can see what you need to work on. But when you pass, it's just a green button that says you pass. But that was the biggest green button and the biggest green word I've ever seen in my life, because that meant more than what it showed. It meant, failing, getting back up, falling, getting back up, falling, getting back up until I finally got it done. So, the message is for people that's on the pursuit of licensure or PMP license, PMP certificates or a master's degree, is like, failure is only failure if you don't keep trying. If you keep trying, if you failed 19 times but got up 20 times, that's a success in my book. And so yeah, I think that would be the one I would call out. And when you get your PE, you don't get asterisks on it if you had to do it a couple times. Mm-hmm. It's the same one, and I don't feel like it was a reflection on my skills either.
No.
It was more of it's just the hardest test you ever gonna take. It's just difficult. But it was more of a test of endurance and perseverance, I would say. So yeah, that would be the kind of setback I would call out.
Absolutely.
That turned into a great testimony.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Because it's very important to know. And
Yeah.
But I mean, we're constantly shifting in what we thought we'd want to be doing, and then we get into the pattern, and we realize we're going in a different direction. So
Mm-hmm.
if there were kind of any opportunities to share kind of a different direction that we were going in, and
Yeah, I can jump in. We
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit offline, but I also took the PE and did not pass. And I actually took it 4 years ago, right around the time that I was having my career shift. I took it the last time it was paper and pencil, and I really felt like I gave it my all, like physically, mentally, emotionally. I was exhausted by the end of it, and it just, for whatever reason, it wasn't quite enough. And so then, I decided to put it on the shelf, and I had this kind of career change, and I, focused on my new role. And so that's something I've actually still been grappling with, is like, what is the next step? And, we're all still in the first half of our career. We were by no means like seasoned, like I made it, and
Right,
so
right.
it's like, I don't want to close any doors, but also like, would pursuing that like really serve me? Do I think I would ever actually use it? Does it still serve me in this current role in a different way? So that's something, I don't have an answer for that, but that's something, I empathize with anyone who's considering what is their next step. Cause I'm like, do I want to get that? Do I want to get a PMP? Do I want to go to, get an MBA? Like there's a lot of next steps. And I definitely think like life is a long journey full of learning. I want to continue learning, but what is the right next step for me? I haven't decided yet. So.
Love it.
perfect. Well, let's just continue to give ourselves grace, but we'll jump back in time. So if you could give yourself, your younger self, some, words of wisdom, what would they be? And this is for everybody, so jump on in whenever.
I guess I'll start out. So I think I was thinking about this question. Honestly, I feel like I came up with about 3 or 4 different answers as I was thinking about this question. But one that I landed on, because thinking about myself and my journey personally, I think I would say take more risk. And I say that in the sense of kind of going back to what Chris and Nick were talking about earlier, is about not being afraid to ask those questions, not being afraid to talk to that person because you feel like you're beneath them or they're not going to be nice to you. I feel like it's important that you take those risks early, and that'll it'll change your mindset and set you up for future success later. Because you never know who it is you're going to have that conversation with. You never know what other people may have similar questions, and you guys can bond over that and really start to figure put things in place. So when I say I would tell myself to take more risk, is more so along those lines. Like don't be afraid to push yourself and push boundaries, even though you may be uncomfortable approaching this person or asking that question. So that's what
We're all supposed to be taking up space here, no matter what.
right. Exactly.
I'll kind of build off what Tarek was saying, because I feel like the one thing that obviously know now is the little things that tend to add up. So like, taking those risks early on, it'll only serve to help you. And I think one of the things that kind of prevents people from taking those risks is that we're always our biggest critic. I feel like that might also be like an engineering trait sometimes.
Yeah.
It could be better.
Could be better.
Yeah.
But I think you also have to be your biggest advocate too.
Yes.
You know, if you want to get more involved in the industry, if you want to join ACEC, future leaders, junior board, you know, no one's better apt to kind of help you do that than yourself.
Yeah.
And no one's going to know yourself better than you. So if you feel like you have to improve this, that, and the other, going back to the critic thing, you know, take ownership of that. You know, do what you think is best for yourself. You know, if you're lucky, you'll have a good mentor, a good career advocate. But, you know, they're still going to be, you know, most primarily invested in themselves as they should be. So I think that's one good piece of advice is just you know, be your best advocate.
I like that.
Yeah, I like to add too. I think what I would tell my younger self is just learn patience. And because when you're young, you like at just even like anatomically, you're at the height of your energy and just physically, like your mind is like the strongest, is the sharpest. You can jump as high as you want. Like just so when you get old, you know, things start changing a little bit in terms of your knees start popping and stuff. And so that's what I would also tell my younger self: don't rush to get old. It's not what you think.
Yeah.
Gravity starts hitting in.
But you know, it's learn patience. There's something to, you know, and I'm a big advocate for education, continuous learning, and certifications. But there is something to just experience, to just like you've seen it. Like I love what Tarek, you know, kind of explained about not calling it a setback, because what you experience from that difficult situation is invaluable. And so there's something to just being patient and just learning as you go, and then learning as you grow. And so that's what I would tell my younger self, because I know personally I'm like, I'm ready to do it. Like let's go. We can. I'll be the CEO today if I could, right? But the CEO knows a lot of things from experience that I just don't have, because it's, you know, it's a timing thing. So learn patience. Definitely take the risks, but then couple that with just a little bit of temperance and patience. I would advise my baby self.
Yeah, I think I'd echo all of those things. My biggest thing in reflecting on this is just like advocating for yourself and putting yourself out there. I know we touched on that a little bit, but for me, I think, you know, it's, you don't want to be a complainer. You don't, you know, you want to just like hunker down and like, this is growing, this is learning. But I think, again, there's a balance to that of like, you only know what's going on with yourself. And so, you know, obviously you have to have people you work with that you trust to be vulnerable. But if, you know, I've definitely had conversations and like annual reviews where I'm like, I'm really struggling with this. And they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. Here's ways we can support you. So, you know, if you don't advocate for yourself with your team and your mentors, then you have to like ask for help and tell people who have gone through this how you're struggling, because they might be like, I struggled with that 5 years ago and this is what works for me, or point you in the right direction. So that's something that I definitely have had to work on, is just like being a little bit more open. It's like, I'm not perfect. I need support. This is what I can do right now. And then little plug for the Young Professional Network. I think, you know, I've gotten more involved with ACEC and other professional organizations in the last couple years. And that has just been really meaningful. You know, the business of engineering focus of ACEC really aligns with where my career is currently headed. And so I was like, yeah, ACEC is the one for me. And so in the last couple years, I've been involved in a way that I really wasn't in the first 4 years of my career. And I will be the first to say that like networking is uncomfortable, at least for some of us. But like I really found that like it only gets easier. I know at some of the young professional happy hours, we've tried to have activities or things to give kind of a little bit more of a focus and not just be like, go talk to strangers. But I feel like with every happy hour I go to, or even like events that Alec puts on, that like everyone I go to, there's always one more person that I've met, and it gets more and more comfortable. And when you make those connections, I mean, hopefully you love your job and you're happy there, but that's how you meet people and you see like where you could go and what your future options are. And, you know, I just think that it yields so many opportunities that, like, you kind of have to do that to really, you know, find where you want to go next. So
I think just to quickly add to that, I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up. Networking is so important. And even another perspective is networking internally as well.
yes.
Which I know, like, at smaller companies it's easy. Like, I worked at very small companies where you met the founders the day you started, right?
Yeah.
CEO, COO. But, you know, when you get to some of these larger firms, it could be, you know, more difficult to do that. Networking internally also helps you to see all the pieces of the puzzle. Like, I might be a traffic engineer, but how does my traffic projections impact forecasting? How does forecasting impact stormwater? How does stormwater impact erosion control? So, but if I just kind of stay in my little silo lane, I won't understand all of the big picture aspects of it. So it helps you technically, and it helps you just professionally. Like, you know people at your firm. And then, you know, ACEC, Young Professionals Network, you start developing actual connections with people. Like, not like, hey, I want to come work on your
No,
project.
at some point
you know?
you get over the hurdle and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm just getting paid to hang out with my
It's all it
friends.
is. It's like, it's literally just hanging out with your friends, like getting some appetizers, getting drinks. That's, you know, that's what you do. Like, that aspect of it is, to me, that adds like so much energy to the day-to-day work. You know, we work hard.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I would also tell my younger self, the work that you do impacts people's lives. You might, I'm just working on CAD, or I'm just working in Synchro, I'm just doing these bridge designs. No, people are going to use this
In
to
their
get
cars
home,
that are
in their
going
cars.
60 miles an hour.
They got kids crying in the backseat, like they trying to get their families home. Like, these are the impacts of what we do. Can I get you through this intersection safer, to make sure you get home to your family, to make sure you get from to and fro to your appointments and things? And so I think just that networking piece, internally, externally, and then just understanding the broader impacts of what you do. It's hard to see it when you're young, because you're like, oh, I'll just focus on this one piece. But, like, we all do very meaningful work. We need an HOA, right, for commercial owners, right?
Yeah.
We need CIDs, right? We need project controls. We need bridge engineers. We definitely need bridge engineers. That's critical, right? So just, you know, telling our younger selves, if I saw all of our younger selves somewhere, I would tell us all, you know, focus on the broader impacts of what you do is really important.
Kind of going into the network, Allison, you were actually one of the first people I met at an off-the-clock.
It's
Oh, look at that.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And look where it's brought us.
I
So
know.
it is
Full circle.
It is a full
Yeah.
circle, always. You build onto the relationships that you
Look at
created.
that.
But yeah, no, I thought I'd throw that in
Yeah.
there.
Y'all see me wiping tears.
Yeah, exactly,
I'm
exactly.
gonna be all right.
I love it.
Allergies.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so we are kind of like starting to wrap up our conversation, this wonderful conversation that we have had. But I have personally one more kind of question to ask you guys. But just kind of throwing out one more piece of advice for our listeners, just to kind of go with, you know, what can they do? Action items for their career.
I guess one big thing, and I mean, just kind of build off the conversation Allison and Chris were really talking about, is don't be afraid to network. You know, I think as a person who used to hate networking themselves, I think when you think about networking, you know, it may seem kind of daunting, but I think, you know, especially with a lot of the events that ACEC puts on with Young Professionals and Thirsty Thursdays, it's really a more relaxed environment for you to just kind of get to talk to people. So, and then consistently going to more relaxed environments to network will really start to build you up, and then you can get into that next level of networking, you know, meeting, you know, higher level people. But I think just consistently networking at ACEC events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But doing that consistent networking will really help you build that muscle and really get yourself out there and take those risks, like I was talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
I want to echo something Chris said earlier just about communication. It is so important. I think that's something I've also, you know, tried as much as I can to be a good communicator, but you learn over time. But the more you can just, you know, again, whether that's advocating for yourself or communicating like, hey, when do you need this by? That like that people will appreciate that and recognize that. And like at a minimum, that is one skill that is, you know, evergreen for whatever your job is. So.
I mean, I got something a little bit different, but I do have to say the networking thing is invaluable because, I mean, it does get easier. If I
It
can
just
tell my
goes to show
former
how
self.
valuable
Yeah.
networking is. You know?
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I see I see you guys.
Again, hated it
Yeah.
like a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
just it just got to rip the Band-Aid off. It gets easier as you
very
go.
much.
Yeah, take someone else.
Yep.
If you really
Yeah,
Yeah,
have a buddy. Honestly,
absolutely.
yeah.
I do see
Yeah.
that a lot. I think that's a good approach. Take
Yeah.
someone you're familiar with.
Take a
Emotional
buddy.
support buddy.
But if I had to give one soundbite, I'll just reiterate something I said earlier: is just be your best advocate. So
I think mine would be I thought about a quote that I heard when Allison was speaking earlier, but they said to control the controllables. So like getting involved, that's a choice. So like if you see an ACEC blurb come out, like go to it. If you see a virtual event, get involved. It not only do you learn from it, but you get to even have a voice in the industry. I didn't even know about a junior board when I first got out of school or ever imagined something like this. So just to have a seat at this table is, I mean, it's something I couldn't have even planned for. But it started with networking. So like, you know, when you get involved with these things, they're like, oh yeah, he's always involved. He's always, and then you get more involved, and then you get more involved. And so I would say control the controllables. Life happens beyond our control. You know, I can't control if something happens to, you know, my health or something. If as long as I'm eating right, that's controllable too. But you know, some things happen that you just had no control over. But you know, being involved in the industry, asking questions, being my biggest advocate, nobody has more control over that than I do myself. And so, if I can leave anybody listening to this with anything, is control the controllables, get involved, and be the biggest advocate for yourself, as Nick and Allison mentioned.
Absolutely. Dig into those curiosities. Ask yourself, okay, does the junior board exist?
Yeah.
Where does that water go? Yeah, just continue to look into
Yeah.
it.
I do want to kind of go off script and ask you to maybe.
Oh,
Ooh,
the
switch-
action item.
switching hats.
Ooh.
So
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm gonna be the guest moderator as you moderate
Let's
and
hear it.
say, "Okay, what would you share? I know you work on the marketing, business development side, but you're in the space. What would you share to the listeners out there?"
Absolutely. I love this. I love this. Just kind of the confidence is as far as you can make it. I mean, it was tough kind of going into this industry, not knowing as much as I'd hoped to. But with that, I have a massive sponge for learning. So just wanted to make sure I was plugging up all the holes, making sure I was learning as much as I could. But that also kind of was a little bit of a dent in my confidence at first, was just because normally I walk into a room and I can start a conversation with a wall.
Yeah.
So I think just kind of allowing myself the grace to, you know, I don't know as much as I do until, like, now I'm still learning. Everybody's still learning. But so just kind of giving myself the confidence to allow for myself to, you know, step into that room and just learn and then, meet those people. It was hard at networking at first. It really was. But, thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Did we have any questions that were being asked? Okay. Perfect. Well, if anybody does kind of have any questions throughout listening and wants to send them in, we're more than happy to be an outlet. And the ACEC Junior Board will continue to answer those questions. But for now,
Yeah, I would say I think we're gonna link all of our info. But like, if you guys have any questions, like I open book. Please email or call with any questions.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that wraps up today's episode of YPN in the Know. So a big thank you to each and every one of you. I've really enjoyed y'all's insights, so I'm hoping that our listeners did as well. Thank you, and excited to see how everybody else navigates their careers. But that is all. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.